Hey dudes, so this is my theme for today. Is reality is pretty fluid. Got some music in the background. I think it's a bootleg, so no copyright. What? Anyways, so I'm cooking my beef stew. I'm in Eastern Europe, by the way, if I didn't put that on the title, but I always do. I'm in Eastern Europe, and reality is pretty fluid if you really think of it, because the social structure that you project onto the foreign, not foreign, but the other country is your perspective. And it's probably a mix of cultures. If you're like me, I'm a nomadic, I've had a nomadic lifestyle since the 1990s. And so my perspective is American plus a mix of different European countries. And if you haven't lived too long in a particular foreign country, you're bound to project your own perspective, which is, you can't assume you know too much about reality. You have to be humble in the face of reality and not just accept your own view and realize that your perspective is sort of narrow. And so when you go about your day, when you're in a foreign country, don't assume that you know everything about the culture. Be on your guard, though. As an American, if you look middle class or upper middle class, there's people in countries that are like in Eastern Europe, where your dollar is worth a lot more than their local currency. But there's going to be people that will identify you and want to rip you off. So you have to be on your guard. Don't be too naive, which is often what Americans are, because you have to look at Americans. We're a pretty generous people. We're trustworthy in general, and we're good people, and very naive and very friendly. We're overly optimistic, and we're very accepting of all peoples. That's a great strength, but it's also a weakness when you go to countries, in the old world, because they're more cynical and worldly wise than us. Not everyone's nice. American culture is pretty young. And especially if you're someplace like from California, where everyone's so open-minded and naive and innocent in comparison to the East Coast of America and Europe in general. It's an older culture there. So you can't really project your sunny viewpoint, an open viewpoint, onto another culture. But it will be refreshing to them. So what's my point? Reality is pretty fluid. Just be careful that you may be a target of someone else's scam. But reality in general is pretty fluid worldwide. What I'm trying to say is, I'm focusing on Europe, and be careful but open-minded, because your reality in whatever part of the world you live, if you're at home in your home country or in Eastern Europe, your reality doesn't have to be a strangled reality where it's your narrow perspective, because you'll find that truth and reality is probably about 75% different from the way you perceive it. So try to perceive things in a bigger picture, as if you're looking 5 years down the road, looking back and going, oh, I shouldn't have been so paranoid, or I shouldn't have been so nervous, or shouldn't have been so worried about stuff. And you do that by opening your mind.